I know, obviously, Zach, that you just wear a lot of hats. You're a real estate agent. You're one of our top producers. You have been since I started. You're a real estate investor. You're a landlord. You're a mother. You're a wife. You're an active community member. I'm sure I'm missing more. And so I was hoping that you could tell me just a little bit about some of the biggest influences on your journey into real estate. And how you've sort of come to wear all of these cool hats.
Sure, no problem. So I'll first start off by saying it wasn't a straight path, right? Like when I was a teenager, I wasn't like, oh, I want to be a successful business owner and realtor. Not on my path. But I was always hardworking, always loved looking at houses. Actually, when I was 18 years old, I bought my first house. It was a tiny little 800 square foot house just shy of my 19th birthday, but I didn't want to rent and I felt like I wasn't ready to live on campus. And so I had been working in Lake City and went to school at Embro University at the time. And so I found this little place out in Springfield on 5 acres. And it was that perfect balance for me, right? You talk about balance. I needed an environment where I could study, was close to work, like not on campus, still wanted to be able to have friends over. So I didn't want to be with mom and dad anymore. And my dad was very supportive and I would say influential in the idea of me being a homeowner. A little place in Springfield didn't last forever, obviously. And either did Embro University. It was great for the first 3 semesters, but it wasn't for me. And I took time off of school and I did some traveling. And when I came back, I decided to go to Mercyhurst University at the time. And so I wanted something a little closer on the other side of town. And I bought my first duplex. And that was influenced by a family friend. And I was not on board at first. I'm going to be honest. I was like, a duplex, like a landlord. I don't know about this. But it was one of the best decisions I ever made, to be honest. So I was able to finish up schooling, live in one unit. My downstairs tenants were great. They were a family of 4, I think, at the time. And I had 2 kids. So because I took time off school and then went back to school, I had children already. So I was like trying to juggle again, all these hats, right? And it gave me that freedom that I wasn't like financially strapped, where it was like the constant, like you have to work and pick up overtime just to pay your bills, which I feel like as a young person in Erie, that can be a challenge, right? There's still a lot of minimum wage jobs, and to get the bills paid, you have to work. And I didn't have to sacrifice getting a degree because I lived in that duplex. And so years go by and I'm living in this duplex, raising my children. And I actually went through a divorce during the time while I was there, which again gave me that freedom to not financially be stressed out, losing that other income. And as I lived there, I actually met my husband that I have now, who also had a 4-unit investment property a few blocks down the road. So we would ride our bikes downtown and go to Frontier Park. And he is extremely handy, which has helped me to grow my real estate portfolio. And we can talk a little bit about that later. But working in a hospital, a 9 to 5, became more challenging when we had our 3rd kid. So I kind of was looking like, what are some other opportunities for me? And again, I always love looking at houses, and I used to see other agencies have these big signs like hiring, training new agents. And I was like, I wonder what that looks like. What is that training process, right? So I can remember actually finding Jake's ad on Craigslist when I was looking for jobs like that were outside of the hospital. And I was like, I'm just going to call. And he called me in for an interview. And I was like, this is really laid back. And it was a small family, local owned business, which if you know me, I'm very supportive of like the local thing. So, you know, I like to see other people have opportunities and grow their business. And Jake was very young and was successful. And at that time, I don't even know that I met Brian. It was just, you know, Jake said, this is a website where you can go get your coursework done. And I'm pretty sure it was like 30 days later that I called Jake back and I was like, I'm done with my coursework, Jake. I'm going to like schedule for my national and state exams. And he was like, we just met in the office. You know, he was like, how are you done already? And I was like, well, when I set my mind to something, I just like go and do it because I hate procrastinating. I feel like that just drags things out and then you miss things or you forget things. So I did like the hardcore, I'm going to study 8 hours a day, like 5 days a week, get through the coursework, like just book. So I just made it through and got my license. And so from there, the journey really began with Jake. And, you know, financially, it's been a great decision for me. It gives me that freedom to set my own hours. And I, you know, at Aggressive, we help each other when you want to take vacation or something. I think there's always enough agents that if you just ask the question, hey, my family's going out of town, can you cover for me? There's someone there for you. So that part is definitely nice. So not to say that I don't answer my phone on vacation, because there's been plenty of vacations where we're still answering our phone, right? But,
yes.
so.
Oh my gosh, there's so much from that I want to ask more about. I could go on and on with you about your journey because I think it's so interesting, and it's so interesting too about, I love that your father supported you and being a homeowner and how that probably helped shape a lot of then what came next. And then at this early age, you were renting your home out and sort of getting that experience and like not even realizing it. And complex piece, I think, is a lot of, I hear that a lot now of younger folks who maybe are afraid to jump into a home on their own financially, or maybe just don't have the means, but thinking about how can I make this happen for myself and have it be a smart decision for me long term. And it seems like that's just something that is more and more people are kind of turning on to, which is exciting. Just as the world has changed, I think that's a great alternative to someone who's like, I want to have this independence, or I want to build, maybe they want to build a portfolio in the future and have investment properties or think about real estate investing, or maybe they just want to own a home and build some equity and do so in a way that makes sense for them financially, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you're 20 years old and you're getting a 15-year mortgage, by the time you're 35, you have your house paid for.
Yeah.
You know, and it can be scary for people to think like, oh, I have a mortgage payment. But ultimately, when you rent someplace, you still have that payment and it's not going towards anything, right? Yeah. So if you can build your credit at a young enough age and save up a little bit of money financially, a lot of times you can buy for the same price that you're renting. I mean, I've sold houses to young adults where they're like, yeah, our rent payment right now is $1,400. So as long as our mortgage is under that, we're good. Like,
yeah.
And
that can get you a nice house.
It can, yeah.
Area, for sure. Yep. That sort of ties into my next question that I had wanted to talk with you about, which was just that so many people come to our brokerage as potential agents, potential buyers, potential sellers, etc. They're interested in real estate, specifically in investing, especially now. I hear that all the time. When I first started, I feel like, 6 years ago, I feel like I heard agents maybe like yourself who had these investment properties or had this portfolio, but I didn't really hear just the general public talking about it or hearing it in our office as much as I do now about, I want to invest in real estate. How do I do that? Right? Like people coming in and specifically reaching out to us about that. And that might have a whole lot of factors that influence why I'm hearing that now. I think a lot of it, though, is also just where we're at. But I guess I was hoping you could walk me through sort of, if you have someone come to you and say, I see you doing this, or I see my friends doing this, and I want to be a part of this this real estate investing. I want to build a portfolio. I want to create passive income. What does that first conversation look like between you and someone who's just brand new to that, and maybe has watched a couple of YouTube videos or read a book and said, all right, I'm ready?
Right.
What does that look like for you?
So I would say my first question back would be to that client would say, do you want to be hands-on or do you want to be hands-off? What do you currently do now, right? Because I think there's so many factors in how you respond to that. So if you already know the person and you know maybe they're established in their career and they like their career, but they're just looking at a way to invest their money into real estate, that's one conversation versus maybe somebody else who is like, I want to build the equity. I'm young. I want a duplex. That's another conversation. And then you have somebody that maybe is a contractor or something that, they're like, I fix houses all the time. Like, that's what I do. And why not like buy properties and fix them up on my own? So there's a bunch of different ways that you can respond to how do you invest in real estate. And I think they're all great opportunities. And you just have to know yourself. And I think those are the important questions. Like, do you want to be hands-on all the time? If the answer is no, I have a lot of other stuff going on. That's when you're like, okay, I need a property manager to help me with this process. I have the funds. It makes sense. I don't want to put all my eggs into the stock market or, into my 401k. Like, I think real estate is continuing to go up and I want to find other ways to invest. And why not real estate if, you're seeing income properties giving you the return that you want, right? And whether that's an immediate return or whether that's a long-term return where you're just building the equity and you're finding ways to maybe get some write-offs on your taxes. A good accountant is definitely something, and a financial advisor that I would tell you to consult with as well. Managing my time definitely can be a challenge, and homeschooling last year for quite a bit of time was, again, another challenge. And I would say one thing that I'm extremely fortunate with is that my husband is supportive on all of those levels in my career, in our business, as well as like being a father. I can't tell you how many nights he reads the bedtime stories, which is just amazing because, and he's an excellent cook. So, if mom is stuck home cooking, my kids are like, they're like, when is dad not going to be working at night? So, the homemade garlic sauce from the Italian background is definitely better than mom's mac and cheese in a box.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Definitely the supportive husband helps out with managing that time. But I do set on my calendar, like, we're small. It's just my husband and I that own our business, but I make sure we do quarterly meetings together. And that entails like going out to eat for lunch so that we have us time for our relationship, as well as like, here are the financials, here are the goals for the business, right? So, and I check into my software where like I manage everything once a week because I feel like the more you let things pile up, the harder it is to manage and the easier it is to overlook something. So I put on there like, so-and-so's lease is expiring like this month. Like, and I'm always forward thinking with those things. And so I just have on my calendar, like I'm checking in here. And then when it comes to being a buyer's agent or a listing agent, I have those as like my top priorities. And my family knows that, like, if we're on vacation and I have a file that is like in process, I may be answering my phone. Even if I have somebody here covering for showing, that doesn't mean they don't want my advice in writing up an offer or assistance. So they know that there may be that window where, hey, mom's got to take this phone call and like help somebody through this step because I am very hands-on. I think it helps the process go smoother. And I think if you stay in communication across the board and all of those things, right? Like whether it's being a mom and you're taking time to communicate with your kids, like your frustrations or your expectations, whether it's sitting down with your seller or buyer and saying like, these are the next steps, whether it's via email, so it's in writing and they can reference back to it, or phone call, and everyone works differently. Some people need all three, some people only want one, like whatever that looks like. It's knowing the individual and making that process work for each individual, but communication is always at the top. And making sure it's on the calendar to plan out those things helps you to remember to communicate what you need to, right? So
yeah, I love that. We just had an Ask an Agent series with a newer agent, Harry, who I'm not sure if you've been able to meet yet. And he had talked a lot about just jumping into real estate and saying, I have to treat it like a 9 to 5. I have to time block. Exactly what you're saying is I have to put these things on the calendar. I love that you said that you and your husband have quarterly meetings, especially with your relationship. I imagine, I know with my own husband, we don't have a need for quarterly meetings, but we do have a need to communicate regularly about things. And it can be really easy to just say, we'll talk about that tomorrow. We'll talk about that tomorrow. We'll deal with this one next week. And when you're thinking about a business that you and your, husband or another family member are running, I can imagine that would be easy to be very lax. When is you had a business partner who was not a family member or not someone close to you, you wouldn't think twice about doing those things.
Right.
In a business or a corporate world, that would be the expectation. So I think that obviously speaks to, your experience. And I was curious if I could follow up on, how did you determine what you talk about at these quarterly meetings, right? I don't have a business degree. I have some experience, obviously, now working and growing in my role of, okay, here's certain things we should be thinking about as a business. But for someone who's kind of starting out, what does that even look like? How did you figure out, okay, we have to review these numbers or these topics?
So how it evolved maybe is just over time, right? Like we probably talk about our business almost daily, unless we're on vacation. There's usually something like with him, especially if there's a unit down, or like right now we're flipping a property. So there's a lot of things on the agenda, right? Like what color do you want? What door do you want? What lighting do you want? All those little things. So there's lots of stuff like that comes out weekly or on a daily basis. But the agenda itself is to pull us back to like, what did we miss potentially? Or what are some things in the future that we need to worry about, right? So like maybe no roofs need replaced right now, but that one roof will need replaced in the next 3 years. So how do we make sure that's like not overlooked? And so, I mean, I've been a part of different organizations that have had meetings, right, on a regular basis. And I feel like any company that is established and has meetings has a set agenda. And I'm an organizer and a paper person. So Google's been my friend with creating like spreadsheets and agendas of things. And so, I just started off by like, this is our debt. This is how much our debt's gone down. Or if we buy a new building, this is how much it's increased, right? So it's that. And profit and loss. And this is our expense budget, because I am a person that I hate debt. And so the idea of like building an investment portfolio and taking on more debt is not something that would come natural to me, like as a desire, right? Like some people they don't care about that. They're like, rack up the credit cards, like, buy the biggest, fanciest car, it's just like cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And they're like, oh, just in time, it's paid. Who cares if the monthly budget? But I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
And so I'm very much like, each building like has certain expenses. Taxes will always go up, probably. Insurance maybe will always go up. Like, who knows, right? Like some of these things you have to budget for, and because things change, I think it's important to stick to a budget, and repairs can become overwhelming if you don't keep a leash on them. And planning for like some of the bigger ones, right? So we all know, like, if you own a home, there can be big expenses, roofs, furnaces, you know, some things are more expensive than others, rewiring a house for electrical, whatever. And you have to imagine, like, in time, every house will need every one of those things taken care of, right? Like, if you hold on to it long term. So setting the agenda for the meeting, like, to me, it was always first, like, let's get the finances out of the way. Like, are we within budget? Like, but with finances also comes some of your goals. And whether that's short-term or long-term goals, I think those are important to discuss. And I have trouble looking, say, 50 years down the road, right? Like, or we'll say even like 30 years down the road. What does that look like? Because I found that in the past, if you live too much in the past, or if you live too much in the future, there can be from the past things that just weigh you down, right? And in the future, if you set certain dreams too high, or just set certain dreams, they can easily be steered another direction, right? Because life happens. And so we do set short-term goals, meaning like, in the next quarter, this is our goal. In the next year, this is our goal. This is our 5-year goal. So I have short-term and long-term goals, but I have trouble going past the 5 years for the business at this time. And I think, you know, maybe that will change the older I get, and the more my family grows, and, you know, definitely the longer you hold something and are okay with it, the easier it becomes to do something else, right? And I just don't know what that something else will be. So it's hard to determine, you know, in 15 years, when all my kids are grown and my mortgages are all paid, does it make sense to keep reinvesting into the real estate market and getting more money out for the family to do things? Or in 15 years, am I going to want to be semi-retired and just, you know, planting flowers for my tenants in a garden? And that's all an unknown. I mean, maybe I'll live in another state by that time. Who knows, right? Like, you don't know what the future holds. And children, I think, maybe can play a big role in your future. And so in time, we'll find out like what those future goals are. But right now, just like sticking with what I think is important, right? Like, what are the maintenance concerns? What are the financial goals? Are we on budget? And then we also have inspections. That's the other thing. So like, the city of Erie requires inspections. So I always make that a part of the agenda. Like, did the city flag anything on an inspection and sometimes it can be something very minor, you know, and it's just, oh yeah, there was chipped and peeling paint on that window. And so let's make sure that gets remediated right away. So
wow.
But staying in compliance and hopefully within budget, right? That's always the goal. And hopefully budget to grow something a little bigger or to pay something off. So.
Yeah, I can imagine that's constantly a thought. That's, at least for me, if I'm thinking, if I were in that position, constantly a thought of, how you do, you know, I think you're constantly weighing out what makes sense right now. Or like you're saying, what could make sense, what's going to make the most sense for us in the next quarter or the next 5 years. And your point about like children and the way that they might impact, and even maybe family members or people that you love, right?
Right.
Everyone sort of has these different communities that they're a part of. And so I don't want to say if you don't have children, then you can't, you're not impacted by those people. But I just think about, my parents live in Buffalo because that's where my grandparents are and they want to be there. Now I have this toddler that my parents also want to be around, and I live in Cincinnati. And so those things it's hard to know. We never thought we'd live in Cincinnati, that wouldn't have been something that my parents would have been like, okay, in 10 years, Jesse and Brian are going to live here. And so we're
right. So we should invest now and then maybe move there, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's hard.
Right.
And now that I understand that pull, now that I have a child of my own, I think, gosh, okay, if my daughter moves to California, I'm moving there. I'll end with this. As your sons get older, what is the first piece of real estate advice that you will give them, or perhaps that you've already given them?
Buy low, sell high? No, or hold. So, I think with them, like I'm not a mom that babies her kids, if that makes sense. So I've already told my children, like, look, when you turn 18, you have some options, right? Like, we love you to death and we want to see you succeed, but succeeding does not necessarily mean just handing you everything. Yeah. So you don't just get the investment property that we've worked hard for and we've done the maintenance on. Like, there's certain things that as an 18-year-old you need to do, and you need to decide what you want in life, right? Like, do you want the college career path? Do you want the hardworking? Like my oldest son right now, he switched his mentality. At first, he thought he was going to be an attorney. He's only a freshman in high school. And he took some classes over at McDowell, and he did great in them. He got good grades, but he's like, I don't know if this is for me. Like, I think I'm going to get into real estate. And I was like, really? Like, where did this come from? And he's like, well, like, I see what you do. And I know you went to college and you didn't go for necessarily real estate, right? Like, that wasn't your main goal when you went there, but you're successful and you're independent and you get to interact with people. And it's like, I think I might like that. And I'm kind of like, well, that's great, but I still think an education is important, right? And I think life experience is important. So when it comes to like them investing, I think again, like, it's meeting each kid where they're at, and it's not just one piece of advice per kid. So if one of my kids decides to go to school in California where real estate is really high, I'm not going to say, buy a duplex. Probably not a reality over there, right? Or in the heart of New York City. Like, we don't have those means to like help them through that process right now if they're 18 and they're moving to a big city like that. But I would say, like, it's not always about the glam when you're 18. So that apartment that you can rent for $2,500 a month looks really awesome, and it'd be great to have your friends and they'd be so impressed, or you might impress the girl that you're in love with, but financially it doesn't make sense. And I think your friends and your family and the people that really love you and care about you and the ones that make you feel good internally, happiness, don't really care, right? In the beginning, if you're just working hard for whatever those goals are, they don't care if you have that big glam of a $2,500 monthly rental. Like, as a mom, I would be like, that's kind of a poor decision. You might want to rethink this, right?
Yes.
Financially, that doesn't fit in. So I think meeting each kid where they decide to be. If they decide to stay here locally, definitely we would help them kind of through those steps. But I also have 4 extremely different boys. One is great at like helping dad fix everything and wants to be involved and always has been, like moving mulch at 3 for the neighbors across the street because he feels that need and desire to like do the landscaping and help out the neighbors, right? Whereas another one's like, I don't want to get dirty. Just don't, right? Like, so, and those are all pieces that play into people's financial goals long term. So, you know, one might be okay with a cute little tiny clean apartment, and the other one might be okay tearing out the walls and getting it as he's working there and redoing a bathroom, you know, like, so again, it's so individual based. And I think that's what I like about being in the industry is that you get to meet so many different people. And if you just listen to what they need or what they want and what their dreams are, you can help them to achieve those dreams. And I'm fortunate enough that I got that experience when I was young to travel and know myself. Not to say that at times I don't stray from my own like desires, right? Because being pulled in different directions. But they're in the back of my mind, and I know at the heart, like what makes me feel good. And so like to make sure I'm trying at least to get that balance in life and setting some of those different time slots definitely helps us out. So
I love it. Thank you, Danielle.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. You're so easy to talk to, and so I appreciate that you were willing to take a risk with me for our closing. I appreciate it. I always know I can call you and say, I'm gonna try this. So you're not usually a big risk taker, but I would say that my experience with you is that you do enjoy being innovative and trying things. So
I do.
That.